Kirk Cousins has made over $250 million in his NFL career, $294 million to be exact, and that's not including endorsements. The career of Cousins can be criticized in many ways, whether it's the lack of playoff success, crumbling in primetime games, and arguably never being a top 7 or 8 player at his position. But one thing you cannot criticize Kirk Cousins for is getting every last dollar he could during his NFL career. But how did he do it? How did a quarterback with just one playoff win in 13 years end up being a top 5 earner in NFL history? It was not easy. Being drafted in the 4th round, he was already behind the 8 ball. As most of us know, the higher you're drafted, the more money you're guaranteed to make on your first contract. Cousins' rookie contract paid him less than $3 million over his first 4 seasons. As a comparison, his teammate Robert Griffin III, who was taken 2nd overall in that same draft, made over $21 million from his rookie deal. That's roughly 7 times more than Cousins, who was drafted 100 picks later. And by the time his first contract was up, Cousins was already 27 years old. On the bright side, in 2015, which was his final year of his rookie deal, he helped lead the Redskins to an NFC East title and led the NFL in completion rate. Despite that though, the Washington front office reportedly lowballed Cousins when it came to contract negotiation time. Mike Garafolo reported that the Redskins offered Cousins around $16 million per year, which would have ranked him the 21st highest paid quarterback in terms of average annual salary. However, Kirk and his agent Mike McCartney did the smart thing here. Rather than accepting the longer deal for security, which would have paid him $16 million per year, they knew that holding out for the franchise tag was a better idea. The bad news was the franchise tag is only 1 year guaranteed, and it really gives you no long-term security. The good news was the value of the non-exclusive franchise tag is the average of the top 5 salaries at the player's position over the past 5 years, or 120% of the player's previous salary, whichever one is greater. Luckily for Cousins, he happened to play the most lucrative position in the sport. Holding out for a franchise tag in 2016's offseason meant Cousins made $20 million rather than the reported $16 million multi-year deal offered by Washington. In some cases, players are livid when they're franchise tagged, especially when they play a position that makes you more exposed to injury, which is the main risk of playing on a franchise tag. For quarterbacks though, especially pocket passers, where the risk of a career-altering injury is much lower than other positions, it was a no-brainer for Cousins to play on the tag. At the time, Cousins was actually the 2nd quarterback in NFL history to play under a franchise tag. The first was Drew Brees in 2005 with the Chargers, and he ironically almost had a career-altering injury that season. In hindsight, it was pretty crazy that Cousins' long-term offer was only $16 million per year, knowing that Brock Osweiler got $18 million per year that same offseason from the Texans. That's just not right. Anyway, 2016 was a tiny step backwards, but still a pretty good season overall for Cousins. The 2017 offseason was a repeat of the offseason prior, as Washington and Cousins tried to negotiate a long-term deal once again. The franchise tag number jumped up from $20 million to about $24 million, so Cousins would yet again increase in his earnings. It came out years later that the 49ers made a real push to acquire Cousins around this time, but it never actually happened. With Kyle Shanahan just taking over there, and the two having worked in Washington in the past, the fit did make sense. The Redskins front office tried to teeter the line yet again, offering Cousins a long-term deal that they thought was enough, but it still was not to his liking. Redskins president Bruce Allen even admitted that the team offered Cousins $53 million guaranteed, which would be the most guaranteed money in league history at that time, but Cousins apparently turned that down. While $53 million guaranteed up front sounds great, it still wasn't the best option when you broke it all down. So his franchise tag number in 2017 gets him to $24 million guaranteed once again. And the projected transition tag for 2018, if they were to franchise in 3 years in a row, would have been around $28 million. So right there, the $24 million and the $28 million added together gets him to $52 million, just $1 million short of the reported guaranteed contract. So if you're in Kirk's shoes, why are you signing a long-term deal for $53 million when you can at minimum make $52 million? So for the first time in league history, a quarterback was franchise tagged 2 years in a row. After the 2 tags, Cousins played 2016 and 2017 and made about $44 million in the process, which was well over the reported offer from the offseason prior of $60 $16 million annually. The rumors already began a summer early in the summer of 2017 for where Cousins would play in 2018. The 49ers were brought up as mentioned earlier, but all of that changed once they acquired Jimmy Garoppolo during the 2017 season. I actually made a whole video about this pretty recently. The other rumor was him joining his former offensive coordinator Sean McVay if Jared Goff could not bounce back from his disappointing rookie year, and it turns out he did. After 2017, Cousins once again took a small step backwards and so did the team, but overall he put up some decent stats in his age 29 season. In late January of 2018, the Redskins made a surprising move, trading cornerback Kendall Fuller and a third-round pick for quarterback Alex Smith. And not only did they trade for Smith, but they also handed him a 4-year deal worth $71 million guaranteed. It was at this moment where we knew the Kirk Cousins era in Washington was over. The initial belief was the Redskins would tag Cousins for a third time, then trade him just to get something back, because ultimately you don't want to lose that asset for nothing. But in the end, they could not do that. There was too much fear that their salary cap would be tied up and it would impact their free agency in a negative way. So finally, after 6 years in Washington, Kirk Cousins was free to sign wherever he wanted. With Alex Smith relocated to make room for Mahomes, it was more reason for the demand to be higher for Cousins with another solid quarterback off the market. The free agent quarterback class in 2018 was nothing great, with Drew Brees and Jimmy Garoppolo re-signing to their former teams. Cousins at the age of 30 was going to be a hot commodity during free agency and had quite a few teams lined up. Cousins, while maybe not elite, was pretty consistent and durable, and in a new system, who knows, maybe there was more there. He was one of only 5 quarterbacks over the previous 3 seasons to throw for over 4,000 yards in each season. According to Cousins' agent Mike McCartney, he immediately received interest from 4 different teams. The Cardinals, the Broncos, the Jets, and the Vikings all got in contact rather quickly. Although Kirk was great at maximizing his value, he did in fact leave some extra money on the table according to his agent. And based on the process of elimination, there's a very good chance it was the Jets they were talking about. But who would want to go to the Jets? Can you blame the guy? On March 15th, Cousins officially signed the largest contract in NFL history with the Minnesota Vikings. The deal was for 3 years and $84 million fully guaranteed. The crazy part is Matt Ryan and Aaron Rodgers signed extensions that same offseason, and even they did not get fully guaranteed deals. With Cousins making $44 million in franchise tags the past 2 years, he essentially held out to make $128 million fully guaranteed over a span of 5 seasons. In his debut season with Minnesota, Cousins put up his best numbers since 2015 with Washington. Sadly, they did fall short of the playoffs just a year after the Minneapolis Miracle with Case Keenum. 2019 saw better team success, with the Vikings going 10-6 and actually winning a playoff game in New Orleans. This was the Kyle Rudolph end zone fade in overtime, giving Cousins his first and only playoff win of his career. The week after, they got slaughtered in San Francisco, with Cousins having a mediocre performance at best. The good news though, with only 1 year left on his 3-year deal, the Vikings extended Cousins, making him one of the top 10 highest paid athletes in the world. Federer, Ronaldo, Messi, LeBron, Tiger Woods, and Kirk Cousins, just like we all expected to see. The extension was for 2 years and $66 million, with 61 of that $66 million guaranteed, and including a $30 million signing bonus. As this Mina Kimes tweet points out, Cousins would have yet another chance to reach the market before even turning 35. Over the next 2 seasons, Minnesota's defense went from being elite to one of the worst in football. They were ranked 5th in defense in 2019 and dropped all the way to 29th in 2020. Cousins still put up his usual good numbers, especially playing from behind in most games, and now being acquainted with Justin Jefferson. Over 2020 and 2021, Cousins threw for 68 touchdowns to just 20 interceptions and completed 67% of his passes. As for team success, there was much to be desired. Minnesota missed the playoffs in both years, leading to the firings of head coach Mike Zimmer and general manager Rick Spielman, who had been together for 8 years. In 2022's offseason, Cousins re-upped with the Vikings once again, signing a 1-year, $35 million contract through 2023. With the extension, Cousins would now be earning $40 million over just 1 year, and it was fully guaranteed. He would enter 2022 with the 3rd highest cap hit in the league, but based on the Vikings' success that season, it did seem worth it. Minnesota went 13-4 with new head coach Kevin O'Connell, and it looked like Kirk was in a good position to win the second playoff game of his career. That was until Daniel Jones came into his building and outplayed him during Wild Card Weekend. The game came down to the ball in Cousins' hands with a chance to tie the game, but throwing the ball well short of the sticks on 4th down negated any chance of that happening. 2023 would end up being his final year in Minnesota. Cousins actually got off to maybe the best first half of his career, but a ruptured Achilles in Week 8 in Green Bay would end his season prematurely. An injury to this magnitude is a bummer at any point, especially during a contract year though. Cousins, who is now 35, would have to simultaneously rehab and look for a potential new team, assuming Minnesota did not want him back. The team went 3-6 after he went down, so clearly his presence was missed, but on the bright side, he could always use that as leverage during negotiations. Despite the Achilles injury, Cousins was still given a massive offer, but it wasn't from Minnesota. According to Albert Breer, the Vikings warned Cousins about their desire to draft a quarterback in the first round, even if he had decided to return to the team, and the guaranteed money was not what he desired either. As we know, the Atlanta Falcons would sign Cousins to a massive 4-year, $180 million deal with $100 million guaranteed. The Falcons would then hilariously draft a quarterback in the first round a month later anyway, but at least Cousins got a ridiculous amount of money from them. The contract from Atlanta will eventually have him surpass Matt Ryan and Tom Brady in career earnings, something that just doesn't seem justifiable, but clearly he knew what he was doing financially. Cousins was ahead of Matthew Stafford as well entering 2024, but I doubt it ends up that way by the time their careers are over. Out of the top 4 highest earners of all time entering 2024, Cousins was the only one to not have a Super Bowl ring. Atlanta was an exciting landing spot, with the team having a new coaching staff, a solid offensive line, and a ton of weapons at the skill positions. However, 2024 did not go as planned. Cousins had a career high and league-leading 16 interceptions as the Falcons went 7-7 in games he started. He rarely looked comfortable driving off his back foot, which was most likely due to the Achilles injury, and his deep ball was way less effective than usual. Cousins got benched after a low-scoring Week 15 win versus Las Vegas, and the quarterback 1 spot now belonged to their first-round pick, Michael Penix. So as we sit here today, the Falcons are in an awkward situation. Cousins still has 3 years remaining on that 4-year deal, and by releasing him, Atlanta would be taking on the 3rd largest dead cap hit in NFL history. If Kirk were to be traded prior to June 1st, his $65 million dead cap hit would be decreased to only $37 million, saving the Falcons an extra $27 million to play around with. Ideally, they'll look to find a trade partner, but ask yourself this: why would any team be willing to inherit that contract, with Cousins now being 37 years old and coming off the worst year of his career? It probably ends with Cousins either being released and accruing $62 million just from last season, and probably more in order to get his $90 million guaranteed. In the likely scenario that he is released, it's highly doubtful that Cousins' next contract is anywhere near the one he signed last offseason. It could play out similar to what Russell Wilson did last year, whose contract with the Steelers was just 1 year and a little over $1 million. Wilson was still owed almost $38 million from Denver last season, so him playing on a very cheap deal in Pittsburgh was not as bad for his wallet as it seemed. So if Cousins were to, let's say, go to the Browns and reunite with Kevin Stefanski, then he would still be making a large sum of money from the Falcons in 2025. Even if his Browns contract is minuscule, he's still owed a base salary of $27.5 million from Atlanta. In total, according to Spotrac, Cousins has accumulated $294 million in NFL contracts. A guy who, when drafted, made under $1 million per year is soon to be top 3 all-time in NFL earnings. Of course, with the salary cap going up each year, Cousins won't be in the top 3 for very long, but to play the franchise tag the way he did in Washington was bold, and nobody has exploited the tag better than Cousins. If you throw that type of money at most young players, especially when more of it is guaranteed, in most cases they're gonna opt for that rather than take the franchise tag. His patience paid off big time to be able to hit free agency in 2018, where teams like Minnesota, the Jets, and Arizona entered a bidding war for the then 30-year-old quarterback. Then hitting free agency again in 2024, where he was lucky enough to have a team like Atlanta confusingly sign him to such an enormous deal. I guess there's 2 valuable lessons here. Number 1, always bet on yourself, and number 2, make sure you hire the right agent. That'll do it for this video. video. I always wanted to make one about this topic, so I hope you guys enjoyed. Of course, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys next time.